Now, unless you guys have been living under a rock in the gacha space, you have probably came across a couple of videos like this. Essentially talking about whether or not Arknights Enfield's gacha, is it bad, is it predatory, is it good, is it free to play friendly, and everything in between. Now, with the latest Arknights Enfield dev livestream, as well as a couple of changes they made to the gacha system, I've also tabulated a couple of my findings from the other gachas, namely HSR, which is going to be the usual big 4 50-50 rate up, as well as a comparison for Uma Musume, which is the classic JP Spark system, in order to essentially compile which of these 3 gachas for Enfield, HSR, as well as Uma Musume is going to be the best for the player base. Hey guys, PokkeCorp here. This is currently 5:39 AM. I've pretty much not slept, and I kind of just want to share with you guys my findings that I've been cranking out for the past 6 or 7 hours. So if you guys could just smash the like and subscribe button, this would be extremely helpful. Without further ado, I'm just going to be jumping right in. I think the best way to take a look at whether or not Arknights Enfield's gacha system is going to be good or bad is basically using it as a contrast as well as benchmark with 2 other gachas, one being the traditional CN 50-50, which we see from HSR, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves, as well as Genshin Impact. For our case, we are just going to be using Honkai Star Rail, as well as a comparison for another gacha, which is going to be Uma Musume, using the very old school JP Spark system. So I'll be ranking each of these 3 gachas as to all of these different categories split amongst this table you will see eventually towards the end, and towards the very last portion, you can kind of just see for yourself exactly which of these gachas is going to be better for you as a player, as well as a couple of additional findings I found from Arknights Enfield itself, so you can kind of just see how exactly this Arknights Enfield gacha system is going to be working out. So first of all, let's just establish the most important thing, which is the pool currency for these different gacha games. It will always differ from one another. So for example, in Uma Musume, it costs you 1500 carats for a single 10 pool, 1600 in HSR, whereas it's going to be 5000 in Arknights Enfield. But this number is purely arbitrary because it really just depends on how much of this income can you actually get in the game from events, from playing the game, login rewards, quality of life, devs, distance, etc. So whatever this number is going to be, honestly, you don't have to worry about it. The only thing you can kind of just consider is pretty much going to be how many pools at the end of the day can you obtain as a free-to-play player playing these gacha games. Now, from the CBT, from the most recent expansion of Arknights Enfield, the number one complaint is not really about the gacha system itself, but rather the lack of pools, because back in the CBT, at least the most recent CBT, there was not a lot of events, as well as an insufficient number of pools straight up in the overall, which led to players playing CBT not even having enough of the currency to begin with. But this is going to be remedied from the actual launch of Arknights Enfield going forward in the future, where the devs, as already mentioned, they're going to be adding new endgame content, new events, increasing number of pools from all of the different shards, as well as the box you can see on the overall. So we are definitely going to be way more income compared to back in CBT. So whatever the income is going to be, at the end of the day, don't worry about it. For right now, we just want to purely focus on how this gacha system in Arknights Enfield actually works, and using this as a comparison with the other 2 gacha. Now, disclaimer, this video is like no war, no drama, no whatever. It is purely just based on facts, based on numbers, as well as an analysis for every single one of these different gachas. Whether or not it's going to be worse, better, predatory, I will leave it up to you guys to decide. But whatever I show you guys on screen, it is only going to be factual information. And for the comparison between, for example, free-to-plays, for the whales, who is going to be better, who is going to be more lucky, for all these gachas, it is purely based on numbers, right? So I'll leave it up to you guys to decide for yourself if this gacha is going to be good or bad. Now, the number one thing that I kind of want to compare between 3, and that is going to be the odds for the gacha system. For Uma Musume, support cards, as well as the Uma itself, is going to be 3% with a 0.75% rate up. Sometimes it's going to be a dual banner for 2 different rate up units at the same time, but that's going to be for Uma. And then for Honkai Star Rail, it's 0.6% for the 5-star, and then 50-50 linked to 0.3% for the rate up. And then for Arknights Enfield, it's going to be a slightly better at 0.8% for the 6-star, and then 0.4% for the rate up after 50-50. And then for the cost per 10 pool, like I mentioned just now, you don't really have to worry about it that much, because the only thing that matters is actually the income for the entire game. So for Uma Musume, it's 1500, HSR is 1600, as well as Arknights Enfield, it's going to be 5000. And then for soft PD, in Uma Musume, there's no such thing as a soft PD. You either go for 0 or 200, that's pretty much it. And then for Honkai Star Rail, from 74 pool onwards, you have a much higher chance of getting a 5-star, although this actual odds has never been disclosed publicly, all the way up until the actual hard PD at 90 pools. And then for Arknights Enfield, this soft PD will go up from 65 pools onwards. Every single pool, every single individual pool increases 6-star rates by 5%, all the way up until you get a hard PD at 80 pools. And then for the spark system or the heart pity for the actual game for getting the rate up, for Uma Musume, it's going to be a 200 pulls, redeem you 1 copy of the actual card or the Uma using the spark system. And then for HSR's heart pity, it is essentially the next 5-star that you have lost your 50-50 to. So this could happen in the next 10 pull, next 20 pull, next 80 pull, whatever it's going to be, based on at most the soft pity. And then for Arknights Endfield, this is independent from the soft pity because you have this spark system itself, which is built into 120 pulls. This is going to be a spark system and it only happens once for every single charted banner. Now this is where we get into a very important thing between the soft pity, hard pity, as well as the pity carry forward. And that's where I think you guys probably don't really understand how Arknights Endfield's gacha actually work. So for Uma Musume, this PD carry forward does not exist for the hard PD, meaning that whatever pools you spend for the Uma Musume banner at up to 200 spark, if you do not redeem for that 1 card, all those gets exchanged to clovers, which is essentially useless because you're going to be exchanging almost like basically nothing, right? And then for Hongai Stario, yes, this PD does carry forward. So if you were to lose your 50-50, your next 5-star on this banner, next banner, or any banner that's on the same banner type, so the limited rate up banner, it will always be guaranteed to be that rate up unit as long as you already lost beforehand. Now for Arknights Endfield, this is gonna be where things will change a lot because it's not something that most of us has ever seen before unless you played the OG Arknights. So there are 2 separate things for this particular PD carry forward system. One is going to be the soft PD and one is going to be the hard PD. Now for the hard PD, this is essentially the spark that we see over here, which is 120 pulls. This hard PD, i.e. the 120 pull spark, it does not carry over. The soft PD from any pulls from 0 all the way to 80, this does carry forward, but every single one of this soft PD does not have a 50-50 reset. You are not guaranteed another additional rate up 6-star even if you were to lose this soft PD. The only thing that guarantees you this hard PD is only gonna be this 120 pull spark. Let me repeat again. Do not build PD in Arknights Endfield. For whatever amount of pulls you do in this banner, this is only going to build towards both your soft PD as well as your hard PD. The main thing is your soft PD carries forward, but the rate up hard PD or the spark does not carry forward. So I think the best example to kind of illustrate this is, for example, Stellar Sora, where Stellar Sora essentially has another very similar system where you have one of the soft PD, which is going to be the rate up, which does actually have a 50-50 built in, which is at a 160th pull, you are going to be guaranteed the next rate up banner. And on top of that, they also have another hard PD at 120 summons, which is going to be where you redeem for 1 additional copy for the rate up. So this is very similar to Arknights Endfield, but the difference is, as you can see over here, this 120 pulls is going to be independent every single time, but everything beforehand, it will not carry forward. So the best example I can think of is essentially if you spend 50 pulls in this particular banner for banner A in Arknights Endfield, this 50 pull will also be translated into the next pull in the soft PD, meaning you only need up to 30 more pulls for the next 6-star. But this 50 pull PD does not carry forward for the hard PD or the 120 spark, meaning for the next rate up 6-star, you still need to do at maximum 120 pulls to guarantee your spark. So that is pretty much the best way I can explain it. If you guys still don't really understand, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I hope that this chart over here can also show a better representation of what's going on. Now moving on into the next banner, and there's going to be the weapon pools. For the weapon pools, the pool currency for Uma Musume is the exact same as you would get from both the support cards as well as the Uma itself, which is going to be 1500 carats. This is also going to be the same for Honkai Stario, where you also use 1600 Stellar Jades or honorary shards to get yourself the same number of pools in the weapon banner. But for Arknights Endfield, this is going to be a different pool currency known as Arsenal tickets, which you can then get for free from your weeklies, events, as well as a pool byproduct, a little bit similar to Stellar Sora. For this particular income for the weapon pools, I'll be explaining it a little bit more towards the end. But that's pretty much all you can know for the 3 different gachas, main gist of how their gachas actually work. So to kind of summarize everything, you can kind of just refer to this chart over here, explaining all of the main important things between these 3 different banners, just to illustrate exactly how the gachas are going to be working. Now I'm going to do a little bit of an exercise where we're going to do a somewhat of a pooling simulation for the possible scenarios in which you're going to be getting the 5-star, the rate up, as well as the worst possible case things where it's going to be happening to the average player base, right? So starting off in the first 0 to 64 pools, and I just want to kind of say, for the Uma Musume corner, you can see there's absolutely no change. It has been a constant 3% SSR with 0.75% rate up. So from 0 pools all the way to 200 pools in Uma Musume, it is going to be the exact same. That is pretty much what you would expect from a JP Gacha gamer, right? So that's going to be that. Now, for 0 to 64, For your Honkai Star Rail, which is the CN5050 banner, it is going to be your 0.6% SSR rate with 0.3% rate up with no change. For Arknights Endfield, your soft PD will start building up from the 65th pool onwards. So from 0 to 64, it is going to be the slightly higher rate compared to the HSR, which is just by 0.1%, which is going to be 0.2%. So total is going to be 0.8% for the SSR, 0.4% for the rate up. But we do have this brand new urgent recruitment feature where after you do 30 pools in this banner, it will give you a free 10 pool, but this 10 pool is independent from the PD as well as the rate up. And then on top of that, if you were to do 60 pools in this banner, you will get another thing called the 800 dossier, which will then convert into a 10 pool for the next banner. This does build PD for the next banner, but keep in mind it will only happen a single time. Meaning you're not going to be able to get multiple hate hunting dossiers, which means you're going to be getting multiple 10 pools for the next banner. So for example, there's a little bit of a misinformation on the Arknights website where people are going to be saying, TLDR, this definitely don't work this way, because if it's actually getting one single limited pool after 60 pools, it means that if a whale were to spend like 460 pools, you could get 400 free pools by the next banner, which just straight up does not make sense. So just to correct this, a little bit of a misinformation going around as of this moment. So now with that out of the way, we can then go into the 65th to 74th pool. For Uma Musume, once again, no change. For Honkai Star Rail, it is still, once again, no change. Then this is the part where we are going to be having our soft PD kick in for Arknights Endfield. So your 6-star rate will increase by 5% per single summon. So for example, your very first summon is 0.8%, your next summon is 5.8, 10.8, 15.8, so on and so forth, all the way up until close to 100% at the 80th pool. So there's gonna be our soft PD. Then from 74 to 80 pools, once again, Uma Musume has no change. For Honkai Star Rail, there are no official data of what exactly is going to be the increased odds, but we have seen that players drastically increase their chance of getting a 5-star from the 74th pool onwards, all the way up to the guarantee at 90. Generally speaking, you can also take a look from this chart over here, where after the 77th pool is the general amount of pools it would take for you to actually get a 5-star in Honkai Star Rail for the median population, right? So this was also the similar poll that we did for the Archer Lycon situation. So most players will probably never really hit the guarantee at 90, just like how most players in Arknights Endfield will never really hit the guarantee at 80 pools, right? This is going to be the absolute hard PD, but most players will be getting the 6-star or the SSR way before that. So from the 74th to 80th pool, like I mentioned, for HSR is going to be guaranteed at 90. At the 80th pool, this will be guaranteed for Arknights Endfield, guarantee you a 6-star, but for this 6-star, it's going to be at a 50-50 rate up. Keep in mind, this 50-50 rate up will not have a hard reset, which means that even if you were to lose this 50-50 rate up at the 80th pool multiple times, you can repeatedly lose this 50-50 without fail, except for the 120 pool spark system. So this is going to be in contrast to, for example, Honkai Star Rail, which you can see over here from the 81 to 90th pool. Uma Musume, once again, no change. But for HSR, 90th pool, which is the absolute worst case scenario, it will then guarantee you the 5-star at a 50% rate up at 0.3% odds. Now, if you were to lose this guarantee, your next 5-star is 100% guaranteed to be the rate up. Unlike Arknights Endfield, where your next 5-star before 120 spark, it can repeatedly lose non-stop. And after the 120 spark goes away, you can also repeatedly lose all the way up until the additional whale spark token, which is going to be at 240 pools. But for that, we'll save that for the whale segment later on. Then for your Arknights Endfield at the 81 to 90th pool, if your 6-star has been obtained previously, it will then reset back to the counter between 0 to 64 pools, which is going to be before the soft PD, and then 65 to 74 pools is going to be where soft PD is going to kick in. Now for this simulation from 91 pools to 120, Uma Musume once again has no change. Then for HSR, it is going to be the exact same. If you get a 5-star at the 90th pool, it will then reset back into 0 to 74, which is going to be before the soft PD. And then 75 to 80 is going to be essentially where you're going to be getting your soft PD kicking into the hard PD. For Arknights Endfield, this 91 to 120 pools is the part where you actually lock in your very first and only spark from this banner. So before this, you are still going to be at the same rate or 0.8% with 0.4% rate up, but you guarantee the rate up 6-star at 120 pools. This happens only once. It is independent from your previous soft PD, which is going to be your 50-50s at your every 6-star at every 80 pool. Now from 121 pools all the way to 180 pools for Uma Musume, once again, is no change, but this is a part where you essentially repeat the same thing process for HSR, where there's no official data, but you're going to be increasing the soft PD from 74 onwards, guarantee you at the next absolute hard PD at 90. So if you go really are the unluckiest HS guy in the world, you will then get your rate up at 180 pools. And then for Arknights Endfield, it is going to be the similar situation from 0 to 64 for normal rates, and 65 to 80 for the soft PD. This is where the whale PD will come in, where 240 pools after 120 will give you a +1 dupe on top of PD. So for this particular instance, I'm going to be explaining this a little bit more for this segment over here, but we are going to be coming into the final segment, which is 181 to 200 pulls. This is mainly just for Uma Musume, because at 200 pulls, you get your first ever spark. So you can see that out of these 3 gacha games, we can probably clearly tell which of these gachas have the most unforgiving gacha system, which is why I have heard of horror stories where people literally spend 1000 pulls for Kira-san Black, which is like really, really scary. Now for this segment over here for Arknights Endfield, this is where the whales will be given an additional quality of life, which is at every 240 pulls, you will then get a dupe shot for the rate up 6 star. So this is going to be seen from 240, 480, 720, 960 as well as 1200, which is going to be the very, very last copy of the dupe. So you can see from this little chart over here, between 121 to 960 pulls, if you did not win 10 50-50s back-to-back in every 80 pulls at the worst possible scenario, which once again, like I mentioned, the real 6-star will generally come way earlier before 80 pulls, just like Hongai style will come way earlier before 90 pulls. But once again, we are assuming the worst possible scenario. You will need to go to 1200 pulls for the final copy as the absolute limit, which between 960 pulls to 1200 has another 3 50-50s. This means you will need to lose 12 50-50s back-to-back in order to guarantee you an E5 copy for the rate up unit in Arknights Endfield. Now, one thing to note is that in Arknights Endfield, you can technically stop at around E4 or even E3 for the whales, because the rate up units can actually share the 50-50 loss pool for the next 2 rotational rate up. So for example, in the current Levitin, as well as the Yvonne, as well as the other girls banner, these 3 units will be having the 50-50s losses rotating side by side, which means that out of the 7 units you will lose your 50-50 to, 2 of them will be the other 2 rate up units. So this is the equivalent of, for example, if you were to put in Hongai Star Rail, if the banner is going to be Tribi and Maide, there is a chance that you might lose your 50-50 in Tribi's banner to Maide himself, which means that you don't really need to pull for an E6 Maide. Also, you don't really need to pull for an E6 Tribi, because on Maide's banner, you might be losing your 50-50 to Tribi herself as well, right? So that's going to be one important thing to know. So at this point of time, I've pretty much went through the every single possible pooling simulation between the very, very first pool, as well as all the way up until 200 pools between Uma Musume, Hongai Star Rail, as well as Arknights Endfield. Once again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them to the best I can, because I have worked out very, very hard to get a full understanding of how this banner system actually works. So at this point, I just want to kind of talk a little bit about a qualitative analysis as to what are the different checks for your different players playing each of these card games. So for a whale, in these 3 card games, if you are playing a whale in Uma Musume and you want to get a max limit break support card, you would potentially go all the way up to 1000 summons, which is 5 times 200 spark for a 4 limit break support card. So that is going to be the absolute max, which is absolute insane. And then for Hongai Star Rail, if you are going to be going to the absolute limit, which is 180 pulls, absolute max, you have to lose your 50-50 7 times, which is going to be the E6. Total number of pulls for that is going to be 1260. And then for Arknights Endfield, you would then need to go 1200 pulls for E5 at 12 consecutive 50-50 losses. Like I mentioned just now, you can lose 50-50 to rate ups on rotation, so E4 or E3 is a good stopping point for whales chasing the E5, because you can still get them within the same banner rotation. So for the winner between the whale check, all things considered, Hongai Star Rail is going to result in the least number of pulls required for the number of dupes, especially considering the 50-50 rate up can actually reward players if you were to get an early 5-star at any given point of time. Now for the free-to-play check, at the worst possible scenario for Uma Musume, it is going to be 200 pulls for a single rate up. This could be the Uma or a support card. Now the worst possible scenario for Hongai Star Rail is going to be 180 pulls for an E0 if you were to lose a 50-50 at hard PD and then lose a 50-50 again at hard PD. Now for Arknights Endfield, this is where you actually benefit the most, because the worst possible scenario for free-to-play is only gonna be 120 pulls for a single copy of the unit. So between all 3 gacha games, the most friendly free-to-play check between them is going to be Arknights Endfield, because you would then only need 120 pulls at the worst possible scenario, because I want to compare the same scenario between all 3 gacha games. Now we then transition this into what if we push this into 2 separate banners at the same time, considering Arknights Endfield's 120 PD does not carry forward. So for Uma Musume, you would then need 400 pulls for 2 rate up, because Uma Musume also does not have PD carry forward. And then for Hongai Star Rail, you will need 360 pulls for 2 E2s, but this does have the PD carry forward. So if you want to get 2 different E0s at the same time, at absolute hard PD, it's going to be 360. But if you do not want to get 2 different E0s and you only wanted a single E0, you could try to build PD in the previous banner, and if you lost, then you simply move on to the next banner. This is a luxury that neither Uma Musume nor Arknights Endfield can actually accomplish. On the other hand, if you wanted both units rate up at E0, Arknights Endfield is going to win once again, because you would then get 240 pulls for 2 E0, once again not having the PD carry forward between the spark system. Whatever 6 stars that you get from the earlies in Arknights Endfield, it is not going to affect the absolute bare minimum, which is going to be the 120 spark. You can, of course, win your 50-50, it is just that there is no guarantee to winning your 50-50s, because you can repeatedly lose them except for that single 120 spark. And this is where we're going to come to if you're going to be a winner, right? If you are going to be having an early SSR, for Uma Musume, Spark is essentially useless because you either get 0 or 200. There's no in between. So whatever you get is going to be whatever you got. And then if you, for example, get Christmas Ogre at 50 pulls, you will save 150 pulls. If you get Christmas Ogre at like 180 pulls, you might as well just go another 20 pulls so they can spend 200 because it's way closer to 200 pulls. For Honkai Star Rail, this is going to be the most beneficial for any player because whenever you get an early Honkai Star Rail, your next rate up SSR is always going to be guaranteed between 1 and 90. So this is the most beneficial, whereas unlike for this particular game, in Arknights Endfield, if you were to get an early SSR between the 0 to 80 pulls, it will not guarantee you the rate up all the way up until 120. So for this particular scenario, Honkai Star Rail will take the winner. So with all these being established for the different pool simulation as well as the odds, how the budget is going to be working, as well as a couple of checks for who is going to be the better gacha for all 3 different games, I kind of want to touch on this bonus topic, which is going to be the weapon banner. So for both Honkai Star Rail and Uma Musume, their weapon banners will be using the same limited premium currency. For Uma is going to be carrots, and for HSR is going to be the Stellar Jades, and these are going to be having their respective rates. So for Uma is going to be the exact same. For HSR is going to be 75-25 at 0.8%, soft PD at 65, hard PD at 80 with the PD carrying forward. Now for Arknights Endfield, their weapon banner is going to be very different because in a sense, you're essentially going to be able to get them completely for free. I will not mention the income you're going to be getting from your rewards, your weeklies, as well as your sort of whatever kind of like events. This is purely from your pool income. So you get 2,000 Arsenal tickets from 6 stars, 200 for 5 stars, 20 for 4 stars. If you get a absolute worst 10 pool, you are going to be getting 380 Arsenal tickets. In the Arknights Endfield weapon system, you will spend 1,980 Arsenal tickets for a single 10 pool. 40x is a guaranteed 6 star at a 25% rate up to 75% lose, and 80 pools will then guarantee you a 6 star rate up. Now keep in mind, this does not have a PD carry forward at all. Meaning the moment you spend on an Arknights Endfield weapon system, you have to commit all the way because it will literally not carry for anything at all into the next banner, right? So it's either 0 or 80, exactly the same like Uma Musume. Now they did add this brand new function for the weapon banner in Arknights Endfield, which is brand new at 100 pools, which is 20 out of 80 pools. You will then unlock yourself a 6-star selector, but this 6-star weapon selector will not have the rate up. If you wanted to get another copy of rate up, so this is purely just for whales, it will then unlock at 180 pools, which would then get another guaranteed 6-star rate up. So from this point on, at every 80 pools afterwards, it will then alternate between the selector without a rate up as well as the rate up weapon every single time. So that is pretty much it for all of the comparisons I've made between all 3 gacha games, from their gacha nature, like how exactly their gacha works, their pooling simulation, as well as a couple of different criteria I'm going to be using them to judge their gacha nature by itself. Now I am going to come to one last segment just to kind of summarize everything you kind of need to know for Arknights Endfield's gacha system. So as of right now, the new features that you probably would not have seen, aside from the rate up, the 120 spark and all kind of stuff, is going to be number 1, the hate hunting doors here. Like I mentioned, 60 pools in this banner is going to be 10 pools in the next banner. This next banner's 10 pool, it will carry forward to the PD, but it's only going to be a single instance for the next banner. Alright, it will not give you like, if you do 400 pools, you will get like another additional like 340 pools for the next banner. Does not work that way, right? So that's going to be a single time hate hunting doors here, 10 pools for the next banner. They added another brand new feature for the Arknights Endfield gacha, which is the urgent recruitment feature, like I mentioned just now, where 30 pools in this banner gives you a free 10 pool for the current banner as well, but it was a completely separate entity, so it is a completely random 10 pool with the exact same odds, which is 0.8% for the SSR, or rather the 6 star, and 0.4% for the rate up. It will not contribute towards your PD, nor does it consume a PD. So if you were to get a rate up 6 star from this free 10 pool from the urgent recruitment, it will not remove any PD you're going to be building towards the spark itself. And then to kind of reiterate one last time, which I think is like it's super important, do not build Pleading on Arknight Endfield because the PT from 0 to 79, it will carry forward, but this is only for the 6-star, not for the Spark. For the Spark itself, which is the 120 pulls, it will never ever carry forward. So if let's just say, if you were to spend 50 pulls in this banner, next banner, you still have to spend 120 pulls to guarantee the rate up. You might get a next 6-star in 30 pulls for the next banner, but you still need bare minimum 120 to guarantee the Spark. Because in Arknights Endfield, 50-50 can repeatedly lose back to back without any guarantees. And last but not least, for Arknights Endfield, the rate up banner is going to be on a rotational basis between 3 different rate up units. So out of the 7 units you're going to be losing on 50-52, 2 of them are going to be from the next rate up. So hopefully this video kind of goes to show exactly everything you need to know for Arknights Endfield's gacha system, every misinformation, everything you're not going to be sure of. I hope that this video has pretty much cleared up everything. If you have anything in mind, you're still unsure, feel free to just comment down below or just join our Discord to get engaged in more Arknights Endfield discussion, right? So with that, I'm going to come to the end. I'm going to go to bed. It's pretty much almost 6:11 AM right now. All the best of gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Holy overworking. Bye-bye.